history and in our tour together the story of the land of Goshen, starting with the story of Joseph. It was existing in Egypt before the time of Joseph, of course, as a part from the Egyptian territory. And the people who are living there, they were Bedouin tribes, and they were taking care of the livestock in this area. This area is like a green fertile land by the border of the River Nile Delta, and from one side, and from the other side the desert. That's why it's a green fertile land, but it's not that fertile comparing with the delta of the River Nile. The delta of the River Nile is very green, and it's a very high fertilizer by the flood of the River Nile. The land of Goshen nearby the green land, but it's not that fertilizer. There is two biggest cities are exist already inside the area of the land of Goshen before the time of the Israelites came to Egypt. The two big cities called Betham and Ramses, which is in hieroglyphic. Those are biblical names, but the names in ancient Egyptian language was called Der Atom, which is Betham. People who were with me in the cruise, you remember Atom? The first one had been created, and he creates things from himself and called Atum. Der Atom meaning the house of Atom or the location of Atom. And then the second one called Der Ra-Mis. Der Ra-Mis. Der meaning the house or location. Ra-Mis meaning the son of Ra. It is not Ramses the king. It exists before Ramses the king by at least 600 years. And we have some temples are related to that period, and we have some tombs, and we got the names of the two cities are clearly mentioned in the ancient Egyptian history. We speak yesterday about Joseph in Egypt and how he excelled to power when he interpreted the dream of the king of Egypt. 7 fat cows had been eaten by 7 ugly and thin cows. And then the king of Egypt found the plan of Joseph good in his sight, and he made him in charge of everything in Egypt. And Joseph going along in the land of Egypt as a second in command, getting the stamp in his hand as a seal or as a scepter, and he started to build storehouses in every settlement and every city in Egypt. During the 7 years of prosperity, Joseph solved the problem by building the storehouses, keeping the grain inside the storehouses to use it in the 7 years of famine. But people live not only by food, we need also water. That's why Joseph, some of our groups, they succeed to go with me to the storehouses of Joseph, and we saw and witnessed the canal. Joseph dig a canal from the River Nile to a depression in the desert, and as he built the storehouses for the grain, he made a store for the water of the River Nile. We have a depression under the ground, 170 feet deep under the ground. That is from where the Egyptians were getting the natrium salts. I speak about it yesterday when we are speaking about mummification. What Joseph do is, during the 7 years of prosperity, he dig a canal from the River Nile, transferring the water to this depression, and he built a dam over the canal, and by this way he kept the water in this depression, which is the Egyptian people using this water later during the 7 years of famine. The Egyptians survived to stay in this place, all of them for the 7 years of famine, and Egypt was saved by the plan of Joseph. In the first year of famine, the Egyptians, they go to the Pharaoh asking him, we work for you for 7 years and we need now to have food. We have no water, we have no irrigation system, we have no cultivation, we have no grain, and we need to have food for us and food for our children. So he told them, I have nothing in my hand. Everything is in the hand of Joseph. Go to Joseph and he will help you and give you food supplies. They go to Joseph, and Joseph say, I get the food, but it is belonged to the Pharaoh, because the Pharaoh, he is the king of Egypt. So if you would like to get some food, you have to buy your own food. So the Egyptian gather their money, they have it in their homes, and they buy the food for themselves. That is in the first year of famine. In the second year of famine, the Egyptian go and give their jewelry, which is made out of silver and gold, to Joseph, and they got some food supplies. In the third year, the Egyptian, they go to Joseph and tell him, now, you will let us die before your eyes. You got the food and we have nothing else to give you. All what we still have is our livestock, our land, and our souls. Take everything, and from this moment we will be subject to your power. We will be subject to the Pharaoh, and you own our souls, and you own our land and everything. So Joseph gives them food, and the Egyptian had been saved, and their life had been saved by this play. During the period of famine, the brothers of Joseph, the famine was severe in the whole world, and the family of Joseph, who are living in the land of Canaan, they suffer from the famine, and they would like to have some food supplies. So they got the permission from their father, Jacob, Israel, and they came all the way to Egypt to get some food supplies from Egypt. Joseph, who became an Egyptian second in command, shaving his beard, dressing a very nice dress, he got the crown above his head, he got the scepter and the stamp in his hand, so his brothers can't recognize him, but he acknowledged and he recognized his brothers. So he gave them a favor, and he gave them food supplies, and he started asking them about their father and about their families. He would like to get some news about his father. They tell him the whole story, and then in the next year they came to get some food supplies, and he told them about himself, and he invited his family, his father, and the whole Israelites to come to Egypt. His family came to Egypt, and by the border of Egypt, Jacob, prophet of God, messenger of God, he would like to have permission. Now his son invited him, but God didn't inspire him to go to Egypt. So he was afraid, if you go to Egypt, this will be against the willing of God. So that's why, before he entered to Egypt, by the border of Egypt, he left his family and he go to the desert and he give offering to the God and pray to the God, please advise me where I go, it is okay to go to Egypt or not. And God speaks to Jacob and tell him, don't be afraid to go to Egypt. I will not let you alone. I will be with you all the time. And you will be a nation in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you back again out of Egypt to the promised land. So Jacob now renew the promise with God and got a new promise from God that he will be a nation in Egypt and he will not be alone in Egypt. That's why when he came to Egypt, God made the king of Egypt giving the best fertile piece of land to the Israelites, or the people, the family of Jacob, to live in. 5 of the brothers of Joseph have been selected by Joseph to have an interview and introduce them to the Pharaoh of Egypt, or the king of Egypt. And Joseph would like to give them this piece of land. So he told them, when the Pharaoh asking you, what's your occupation? You have to say that we are shepherd we are, and we are taking care of livestock, we and our fathers. Why they would like to say something like that? What is the purpose of saying that they are shepherds and they are taking care of livestock? Let us agree together that we have only 2 careers in Egypt. The only 2 careers for the normal Egyptian people in Egypt. The first one is cultivating the land, farming the land. And the people who are farming the land, they are scattered in the southern part of Egypt, along the river Nile in a very narrow valley. If they lived there, they would be far away from the promised land. Imagine, God of course has a plan for the Israelites, has a plan for Joseph, and he inspired Joseph with what to do. Imagine if in the night of the Passover, the Israelites will exist in Aswan or in Luxor, and they need to go all the way to the promised land. It will be a very hard job for them. So God is planning everything from the beginning, and that's why they settled in the best fertile piece of land, which we called it under the name of the land of Goshen. Not only like that, let us say that they are the second category of people. They are the second category of people who are free in Egypt. If we read the Bible very well, we know that as everyone in Egypt now, because they got grain from Joseph, so they sold everything, even their souls. So all of them, they became slaves for the king of Egypt, except the high priests of Egypt, because they got allotment from the king of Egypt. So those are the only Egyptian free people in Egypt, are the high priestess of Egypt. The second category of people or group of people in Egypt, they are free. They were the Israelites, because they didn't buy the food and they didn't sell their souls to get the food. They were guests of the king of Egypt, living in the land of Goshen, and they were having a job, living in a very good way of life, and their job was taking care of the livestock of the king of Egypt himself. We could understand that from the verses of the Bible, which is saying that king of Egypt is telling Joseph, now that the whole land of Egypt is before you. Give your family the best fertile piece of land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And find if some of your brothers got the ability to take care of my livestock. So they were working for the king of Egypt, taking care of his livestock, living in the land of Goshen in a prosperity, and they were the only community in Egypt who are free beside the Egyptian high priests, and the rest of Egypt were slaves. So the new Pharaoh who came over the throne of Egypt later in the time of the Exodus and used the Israelites as slaves, all what happened is he makes them equal to the Egyptian. Because the Egyptians were slaves before the Israelites became slaves by at least 300 years. And the one who made the Egyptian slaves, it was the plan of Joseph, to make everyone in Egypt slave to the Pharaoh of the king of Egypt, when he gave them the food supplies. The land of Goshen, they stayed in the land of Goshen for almost 430 years. 300 years of these 400 years were prosperity. They were living in prosperity in the land of Goshen, enjoying their time, having a very good style of life. 80 years of those 400 years, the man who is in command, he was Joseph himself. So they were living in prosperity because their brother was the second in command in Egypt. Until a new Pharaoh came over the throne of Egypt, he don't know Joseph. He didn't believe in Joseph as a prophet of God. And that's why he started to use the Israelites as slaves. And that is a period when mother of Moses delivered him, and she would keep him in her house for 3 months, and she can't keep him anymore. She put him in a basket, threw him to the river Nile, and the story we speak about it yesterday, and I know that you know it better than me. The daughter of the Pharaoh pulled him out from the water of the river Nile, taking him to become prince of Egypt and take him to the palace for 40 years. While we are driving in the last 1 hour and a half or almost 2 hours, we were driving through the desert, right? And then all of a sudden, take a look to your left hand side. We have a green land. That is the border of the land of Goshen. So the land of Goshen, it's a green land, fertile land, not good as as the delta of the river Nile, not good as the valley of the river Nile, which is a flood silted every year, but it is good enough to have some green plantation. It is good enough to have some food for the livestock, and that's why the Israelites were living nearby here. The two cities which is mentioned in the Bible that they were settled in it, which is called Betham